Howdy, everybody. Hope your weekend was okay. Hope you went out and voted today. The all these elections have been a tough time on a lot of people, and hopefully by tomorrow we'll have some healing in this country. But today, before the healing starts, I'll give you some more information about writers, important writers of the last part of the 20th century. And I'll send you your next essay, which will be on. I'll give you a choice of three writers. I'm going to talk about each one of them right now a little bit. You'll just choose one to write about, and it's like a research paper. And so you research them. Watch, read some excerpts from their stuff. This is all online. You can see all this stuff online. You can watch documentaries about them because a lot of stuff's been made about all these people. Who they are, why they mattered, and they do matter and did matter. They're all, by the way, they're not with us any longer, but their words remain. One of them is a playwright, one of them is an African American woman, and the other one is a Jewish writer from New Jersey who wrote many, many, many masterful works. I'll talk about that in a minute. So each of them, and then the other one is a playwright from actually California, and he won the Pulitzer Prize for plays. They all won the Pulitzer Prize for literature, and so they're very, very in the canon of writers. They're as high as you can get out there. So I hope everything's going good. If you're looking at the assignments, look for this an assignment. I'll sign it later tonight after this lecture's over, and I might sign you a documentary or something to look at also about writers. Maybe not these writers, but about writers in general. And then you'll be on your own with these three writers, and you'll have a week to do it. And I think that's going to be XA 6. That means one more after that. And then we go into, we'll be having a quiz later. And you're going to do a final research paper on the topic of your choice. You just got to run it by me. It'll be a topic, something we've covered from old painters to literature to music and whatever else I'm going to cover in the next couple 4 weeks, and then the class is winding down. We have yet to come. We're going to do film, movies, and that's coming up. We'll maybe do some contemporary television. We'll see if we have time for that. And I'm still going to hit some modern artists. We didn't really hit the modern guys, and I want to hit that. I'm talking about painters, and maybe do a little architecture. That's always actually more fun than you think, because we live in buildings of some sort, and so architecture has a lot to do with our lives. And what you see, do you see beauty in a building? Is there any buildings that mean anything to you or meant anything to you? We'll be talking about it. It's important, and it's part of the humanities. It's part of the book. And right now we're not on the book right now because I kind of went off on these literary writers. I wanted to explore that in depth, and I think we have pretty good. Anyway, so the writers I'm talking about tonight, one of them is Toni Morrison, who has written in a realm they call, I don't like this term so much, magical realism. Maybe you have read something by her. She was a iconic African American writer that got success, which is not easy in this country at all, but she did. Her most famous book would probably be Beloved, I'm guessing. It was made into a movie. Maybe you know her. Maybe you've read about her in other classes. She just died last year, I believe. She did pretty good. She had a great run. and a great following. People of all nationalities read Toni Morrison's because she was writing in a universal language, not just about a certain aspect of our sociology, which would be the African American aspect. Yes, she wrote in that, but her stuff is very universal, and her audience crosses a wide spectrum of countries, nationalities, ages, and sexes. And so she tapped into uh, the meaning of who we are, or we wouldn't read her works. Good writers will tap into universal truths, and that's usually something we all can relate to. Even though you may not be an African American woman, but you're going to still relate to it, because that's how insightful the writing is. And all these writers like that. They transcend um, expectations. They transcend their skin colors, their sex, and they get at the hardcore universal truth of who we are. And that's all any artist could possibly hope to do. These guys did it. These women and guys. If you guys know Oprah Winfrey, you go see some interviews with Toni Morrison. She was on the show. Oprah really supported her and promoted her over the years. And so there's a lot of material on her out there on your World Wide Web for you to do your research on. I'll assign the assignment tonight, but you'll see what I'm looking for. This is not going to be a critical essay. It's going to be a research paper. So you're going to have some sources. And so there will be a works cited page, and you'll tell me the sources, where you got your information. And I'm just going to ask you not to use Wikipedia. Find other sources, and there's a ton out there. If you watch a documentary, tell me the documentary, cite it as a citation in the works cited page. Okay. So it should be 3 minimum pages. You can go over, I don't care how many pages it goes over that, just as long as it's at least 3 pages. That I've mentioned this before, but writing to a certain amount of word count is a discipline in itself. And it's something you need to acquire as long as you're going to college, because maybe some of you go to a 4-year college, maybe somewhere you go to grad school, and you're going to have to write 35-page papers, 40-page papers. I think I mentioned this once before. My master thesis was 100 pages minimally. So if you think 3 pages is tough, try coming up with 100 pages and 10 sources, and they're real specific. And so these are just the papers I'm assigning are stepping stones towards something greater that could be in your future. You never know if you continue with your academics. I hope you do. The other writer I want to talk about is a celebrated playwright, Sam Shepard. He was also an actor. He was in a recent series called Bloodlines. Maybe you've seen it. He played the father. Sissy Spacek was the mother. They owned a resort hotel thing in the islands. And he died last year. He got sick with what they call Lou Gehrig's disease, died at 73 years old. He was a very, very huge influence on me as a playwright, but also as an artist, a mentor, if you will. His main influences was Samuel Beckett. I could teach a whole class on Beckett. I'm not going to bore you with it, but he was a a writer born in Ireland, but he wrote a lot of his manuscripts in French, of all things. And he's most famously known for his play Waiting for Godot. Maybe you've heard of that. And other plays, and also wrote novels too. And Sam Shepard was very much influenced by him. And you can see it in Shepard's work. Waiting for Godot was a groundbreaking play of the highest order. Maybe you've heard about it, about two guys who are out in the middle of nowhere, and they keep asking the question, where are they? Where are we going? It's an existential play, and they're waiting for this mysterious stranger to show up, Godot. Like everything's going to be great once he shows up. Well, good luck. Anyway, Shepard was definitely influenced by Beckett's sparseness and sort of sometimes surreal imagery. Shepard wrote many years for the Magic Theater down in San Francisco. They gave him a forum for his plays. A lot of them were, I would call them, experimental surreal plays. That the Magic Theater, which is still down there, of course, it's closed down now because of the virus, put on his plays. They gave him a platform for his work. And in New York City, he had a platform, the La Mama Theater, which was off Broadway in East Village, and they produced many of his plays. And some of them, before he got more mainstream, were very experimental. And had surreal imagery, absolutely, for sure. And then he kind of, I hate this, I'm not saying the word is, he changed. Maybe he wanted more success in the mainstream, and he started with a play called The Curse of the Starving Class and Buried Child. And these are more realistic plays. And he won the Pulitzer Prize for Buried Child, and that put him on a trajectory into a future of many, many, many great plays like True West, Lie of the Mind, Cowboy Mouth, Fool for Love. Anyway, you can't see it. It's right behind my head. Right there. Right there is the poster for the off-Broadway production of Fool for Love. Starred Ed Harris and forgetting her name, Kathy Baker. Yeah, that's actually the original poster of it. Elvis was on the poster. Elvis wasn't in the play. He just used him as a poster. Anyway, Shepard went on to become a pretty successful actor, and maybe you've seen him as an actor. He started, his early movie would have been Days of Heaven, Terrence Malick. That's his first movie. He's pretty stiff in it. He's a real handsome, stoic type of dude. Then he did The Right Stuff, which was a huge hit. He played one of the astronauts, and it kind of pushed him into stardom. And all of a sudden, he became more of an actor than a playwright. And then he hooked up. He did a movie called Frances about the late actress Frances Farmer, who had a mental breakdown, had a lobotomy, played by Jessica Lange. They fell in love, and they lived together for about 35 years. They didn't marry, but they did have some children. And so if you know who Jessica Lange is, maybe you've seen Horror Story. It's a TV series. She's the main woman in that. He went on to make a lot of different movies. Maybe his best one he made in the last 20 years was called Black Hawk Down. Maybe you've seen it. He plays the general on it, of the combat unit. So he could play anything from generals to cowboys. And but his real passion was writing plays. And he did the acting jobs to make money, because you can't make a lot of money solely on your playwriting. That's it. That's all about Shepard. You're gonna have to figure it out yourself, but I'll suggest some stuff for you to look at in the assignments. The third one I want to talk about is a writer who is a kind of scholastic writer who changed the whole field of fiction writing. His name was Philip Roth. He was from New Jersey, a Jewish writer, and that's important. I only bring it up because that's what he writes about, the Jewish experience in 20th century America. And his writing is, his book that put him on the map was called Portnoy's Complaint, about a guy named Portnoy, and he goes to a therapist because he's got a lot of complaints. Most of them he's trying to, let's face it, folks, he's trying to get laid, and he doesn't know how to go about it. So the movie, the book, they made it into a really good movie with Richard Benjamin. It's about this guy, this New Yorker, trying to make it in New York as a young man, fighting his Jewish heritage, but he also is on the prowl to hook up with a beautiful woman. That put him on the map. It was a bestseller. A lot of critics dissed it because it seemed like he was bad-mouthing Jews, although he's a Jew. Other Jewish people embraced it, said, hold on, he captures it perfectly. He went on to write so many amazing books, and when he got older, his late 60s, he died about a year ago, he wrote 5 or 6 of the greatest books of the 20th century. He wrote a trilogy, an American trilogy, American Pastoral, The Human Stain, I Married a Communist. And he cranked these books out at one a year, and these are major works of literature. So he was on a roll when most writers are retiring or they don't have anything to say or they're repeating themselves. He was breaking new ground. One of his great books was called Sabbath Theater. It's savage. And when I say it's savage, in its emotion, folks, not in car chases or violence, although there is emotional violence, but there's always with a grain of truth and some humor thrown in there. And it's a devastating book to read. That's how beautiful it is. It's not a beach read that you get through quickly. You want to savor all the words. Then later on, as he got older, his books became thinner and thinner. And his last 5 novels were novellas, they call them, which is around 150 pages or so, because he just didn't have that much to say anymore. And he said it, I'm winding down. And then finally, he stopped writing fiction. He had just got into his early 80s, and he knew he was not long for this. And a lot of his movies have been made into movies, so he was financially well off. Most of them made the bestseller list. He was not only commercially successful, but critically successful, and that's a rare combination. And then he just simply faded. He says, I'm done writing. And within about 2 years, he was dead. It was kind of a brilliant exit because he controlled it the whole way. But there's like I say, there's lots of interviews with him and clips from his movies. And so you get a sense of who he was, yeah. So those are the 3 writers I want you to look at seriously. And then we'll go off writing, and we'll get on to another topic at towards the end of this week. I might go back to modern art. We never hit modern art. We never got to Andy Warhol, Picasso, Basquiat, Willem de Kooning. I don't want to hit those. And probably spend a week on that stuff at least. So those are the 3. That's where we are. Writing matters. Are people reading now? That's always the good question. Well, there's always been ups and downs and flows of people reading. Generations read differently. Um, the more media we have, I believe the discipline of reading is not as prevalent as used to be. Now that we've got Netflix and Hulu and Amazon at our fingertips, and then we have YouTube and all the rest, and Instagram and Facebook, and that does take away from sitting in a corner in a chair and a lamp with your cat on your lap reading a book. That takes a quiet discipline that I think we are kind of losing in this noisy 21st century world. I usually read at night before I go to bed, and so I have to read before I go to sleep. That's how I roll. But I used to read a lot more. I used to literally read, I don't know, a new novel every 2 weeks. Now I read 5 or 6 novels a year. I read a lot of nonfiction, mostly about movie directors and punk rock stars and things like that, which I'm fascinated by. I do read, I'm reading a book on Andy Warhol right now, which is 900 pages, folks. And I'm reading a book, also a nonfiction book on Susan Sontag, who was a philosopher, a free thinker in the 60s and 70s, and wrote some incredible essays. She was an incredible woman. She was a filmmaker, and she also passed away, but she was a cultural icon in the 60s and 70s, for sure. Forerunner of feminism. She was brilliant. So those are some of the books on my book stand. Plus, I've got a book over there by the guitar player from the Heartbreakers, and not Tom Petty Heartbreakers, Johnny Thunder's Heartbreakers. They're the New York version. Anyway, I'm always fascinated about the creative process, how people operate, creative people. How does a filmmaker operate? What goes through their heads? I need to know, because I want to know how to capture it myself. And because I'm a half-assed writer and a half-assed musician, half-assed filmmaker, I want to know what their processes were, successful people, to see if I'm even in the same ball game. And you know what? Creativity is sort of, everybody's on the even playing field. Just as some people, know how to make money and some people don't. So if anything we get out of this class is understanding these creative people, from painters to writers to architects to whomever, philosophers, poets, writers, directors, actors, playwrights, the whole bit. What makes them tick, and what did they do to contribute to the culture that we live in right now? And is it possible to contribute to the culture we live in right now? It's not. It's, in a way, it's easier than ever before, because you could get your own YouTube channel. But in a way, because there's a glut of material out there, it's hard to get noticed anymore. Because how many YouTube channels are there? A lot. How do you get above the crowd? That's not easy. But if you've got some talents and original thinking, and you're not just regurgitating what everybody else is doing, you do have a possibility of rising above. Hopefully, that's the hope. Anyway, so look for assignments. Look at this lecture. I'm going to post it right now, and I'll see you in a couple days. And please, once again, have patience on the grading. Thank you.